Chapter 903. This should be the complete world tree. Its divine might is boundless and infinite. It's enough to support a world that's even stronger than the primordial world. It's a supreme world with part of the eternal matter. Looking at the decaying world tree, Feng Zichen was filled with emotions. He originally thought that after cultivating the primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian and wiping away the long river of time and space, he would be truly immortal. But now, looking at it, he was still too naive. Even a supreme existence at the half-step eternal level could fall, let alone a mere primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian. Primordial chaos was not safe. The samsara tribulation was too terrifying. Only by truly achieving eternity could one be truly free and unfettered. Sighing in his heart, Feng Zichen stepped forward, carefully avoiding the power of nirvana on the tree stump, and walked towards the center of the tree stump. There, a sparkling purple divine light flowed, blooming with a mysterious color. If Feng Zichen's guess was correct, that was the eternal matter of this world. It was also the foundation of this world's existence, the eternal source. It's really beautiful. Looking at the purple stream of light in front of him, Feng Zichen's eyes showed a long-lost intoxication. The beauty of the eternal source could not be described with words. All the beautiful adjectives in the world were not enough to describe it. It was a true treasure that no one in the world could compare to. He saw that around the purple stream of light, countless power of nirvana surged, but it could not get close to this place. The power of nirvana was afraid of the eternal divine might. This was the true eternal matter, the origin of the great path. Even the Hongmeng purple gas was far from being comparable to it. The Hongmeng purple gas was said to be an eternal matter and was not afraid of the power of nirvana. However, if it was thrown into the sea of nirvana, with the passage of time, it would eventually be completely destroyed by the power of nirvana. However, this eternal matter would not. It was truly eternal. No power in the world could damage it in the slightest. It had the property of being indestructible. Even if it was thrown into the sea of nirvana, it would only be the sea of nirvana that would be destroyed, not the eternal source. Very good. Very good. Coming back to his senses, Feng Zichen's intoxicated look was replaced by excitement. How could he not be excited? These eternal substances would be the foundation of his path. As long as he could refine it, even if he couldn't reach the eternal realm, he would be able to step into the half-step eternal realm. This was the ticket to eternity. After a long while, Feng Zichen finally calmed down his excited mood. Then, he began to refine the eternal source in front of him. Although Feng Zichen had found the eternal source, it was not easy to completely refine it. The quality of the eternal source was much higher than Feng Zichen's. If he touched it rashly, it was hard to say who would refine who. Therefore, Feng Zichen could only use his mana to grind it bit by bit. First, let the eternal source adapt to his aura, and then try to refine it. With a thought, Feng Zichen's magic disintegrated and turned into a purple river, crossing the void and brushing toward the eternal source over and over again. Feng Zichen's purpose of doing this was to let the eternal substance be tainted with his aura. In this way, it would be easier for him to refine this power. This was destined to be a painstaking effort that couldn't be rushed. In the blink of an eye, 10,000 years had passed, and the eternal source was indeed the eternal source. It was still eternal and unmoving. In other words, Feng Zichen had worked hard for 10,000 years and succeeded in letting the eternal source be tainted with his aura. But this didn't mean that Feng Zichen's efforts were all in vain. Although he couldn't let the eternal source be tainted with his aura, after 10,000 years of hard work, his body was successfully tainted with the aura of the eternal source. In this way, although it was not in line with his plan, it was considered a success. However, in these 10,000 years, Feng Zichen also understood one thing. With his current strength, it would be difficult for him to refine the eternal substance even if he spent 1,000,000 years. Therefore, he changed his mind and no longer refined the eternal source. Instead, he brought it back to the untainted land and worked with his original body to refine it. It would be much easier to take it away. First, he used a secret method to inform Feng Jie and the others to get ready. Then Feng Zichen waited for a few days. Suddenly, he rolled up the eternal source and turned back into his human form. And the source of eternity was in his heart. He was using himself as a container to forcibly take away the eternal source. This was a good method. His physical body was transformed from the qi of Hongmeng and could be used to carry the eternal source. The moment Feng Zichen took away the eternal source, the world suddenly disintegrated. Without the power of nirvana, it collapsed on its own. The collapse of the whole body, in the blink of an eye, returned to the state of nothingness. This change was so fast that it was beyond Feng Zichen's imagination. It was still intact a moment ago, but the next moment, it completely disappeared. It was not an exaggeration to say that it went against common sense. But soon, Feng Zichen realized what was going on. Countless years ago, at the end of the last reincarnation tribulation, this world was destroyed and completely disappeared. The reason why it existed now was because of the eternal source. Now that the eternal source had disappeared, this world had no support. Naturally, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. Like a bubble, it burst with a poke. How could it not disappear quickly? When this world was destroyed, Feng Zichen saw several streams of light rushing out of the collapsing world and escaping toward the chaos. Oh, this world's foundation is really deep. There are so many forces that can escape the calamity of destruction. Seeing this scene, Feng Zichen could not help but exclaim in surprise. Those streams of light were naturally the various forces of this world. It could only be said that, as expected of a world that had produced a supreme powerhouse, its foundation was really deep. Even if it was so cowardly, it still did not lack treasures. At this moment, among the several streams of light, one of them flew in the direction of Feng Zichen according to the guidance of the unseen. The divine light fell and turned into a temple in front of Feng Zichen. It was the Temple of Life. The life of the Temple of Life, as well as the descendants of Feng Jie, were all inside. Leave the eternal source. Before Feng Zichen could exchange pleasantries with them, two violent shouts suddenly came from the chaos. Then, two divine lights broke through the chaos and arrived. It's the God of God and Truth. The previous goddess of life exclaimed, recognizing the origin of the two divine lights. Feng Zichen did not retreat. Instead, he clenched his fist and punched out. A domineering fist intent that swept across the universe and crushed the heavens spread out, shattering the two divine lights and revealing the true appearance inside. It was two figures with divine halos above their heads. They clearly emitted a holy and auspicious aura, but they gave people a feeling of superiority. The God of God and Truth, the strongest person in this world. Chapter 904. You too, what is this? Feng Zichen asked knowingly as he looked at the two powerhouses in front of him. Foreigner, the eternal source is the treasure of our world. We can't let you take it away, God, who was shrouded in a divine halo, said in a deep voice. Beside him, the God of Truth didn't say anything, but judging from her attitude, she obviously had the same idea as God. What if I don't keep it? Feng Zichen didn't bother to pretend and asked lazily. If the Western world hadn't been destroyed, Feng Zichen might have been afraid of them. But now, the Western world had been destroyed, and these two had lost their greatest reliance. They couldn't mobilize the power of heaven and earth and exert the power comparable to the origin. Their realm was comparable to Feng Zichen, and they were both at the limit of the Taoist priests. How could they be a match for Feng Zichen? Even if they broke through and became sage-to-be, they couldn't. Although Feng Zichen was a Taoist priest, without the interference of the qi of the end, he could mobilize the power of his original body at any time and burst out the power comparable to the origin. If these two fought with him, they would be courting death. Kill! Seeing Feng Zichen's attitude, the two immediately understood that it was impossible for him to hand over the eternal source. At that moment, the two didn't hesitate and directly attacked Feng Zichen. Be careful! Beside Feng Zichen, the former goddess of life hurriedly reminded him when she saw this. She used her magical power and was ready to help. But before she could do anything, a purple long sword suddenly appeared in Feng Zichen's hand, and he slashed at the two of them. Whoosh! The sword light flashed, and as if it had surpassed time, it appeared in front of the two of them and split them in half. Successful in one strike, Feng Zichen wasn't excited. Instead, he frowned. The sword didn't feel like it had hit anything, which meant that the two of them had dodged it. Just as he was thinking about this, he saw the two halves of the figure suddenly disintegrate into light spots that filled the sky and dissipated. The power of faith? I underestimated you. Feng Zichen turned his gaze to another part of the primal chaos. There, a figure shrouded in divine light quietly appeared. The two supreme experts who dominated the Western world were actually the same person. One was the main body, and the other was the divinity used to receive the power of faith. Now that the world was destroyed and everything was gone, there was no need for the two of them to hide their identities. They merged into one and broke through the limit to become Sage to Be. No, it was not just Sage to Be. After breaking through to Sage to Be, his power continued to grow. Soon, he broke through to the middle stage of Sage to Be. Moreover, it did not stop there. It was as if there was no end to it. It wanted to break through to the realm of the primordial Daluo Jingxian. For such a situation to occur, there was no doubt that God had not been idle all these years. Although he was unable to break through to the quasi-sage realm and enter a higher realm, he was still able to do so. But he was still storing power to make plans for the future. Now, after the world was destroyed, the shackles on God's body were all removed. The power he had stored before could be put to use and constantly raise his realm. If not for his previous accumulation, it would not have been so easy for God to break through. After all, after the world was destroyed, the place where Feng Zichen and the others were was in the boundless primal chaos. A mere Daluo Taoist priest wanted to break through here. He was simply courting death. The violent primal chaos could destroy him on the spot. Back then, the reason why Feng Zichen could break through in the boundless primal chaos was that he had the help of the chaos bead, which could suppress the primal chaos. Therefore, he dared to break through without worry. God was breaking through at this time using the power he had accumulated before, not by swallowing the primal chaos. Therefore, he was not in danger. Otherwise, there was no need for Feng Zichen to make a move. He would be dead. So confident that you dare to break through in front of me. Do you really think I won't dare to make a move? Seeing that God was breaking through in front of him as if there was no one else around, Feng Zichen first smiled slightly, and then he slashed down with his sword. At this time, Feng Zichen's swordsmanship had already broken away from Panga's influence. When the sword slashed down, it was no longer the Tao of splitting the heavens, but the power of great destruction. It wanted to destroy all things and make them return to Hongmeng. After comprehending the power of destruction for thousands of years, he was not completely without gains. Under the constant comparison with the Hongmeng purple gas, he had mastered some of the power of destruction. This allowed his understanding of the Hongmeng Dao to reach a higher level. This sword was the result of Feng Zichen's years of hard work. Whoosh! Wherever the sword light passed, even the primal chaos was destroyed. It then evolved into Hongmeng and became a part of the sword light, strengthening the power of the sword. Boom, boom, boom. The closer the sword light got to God, the stronger it became. By the time it reached God's side, it was twice as powerful as before. Rise, heaven. The moment the sword light touched God, he finally reacted. Pure white divine light erupted from his body. It was incomparably sacred, and gradually formed a divine kingdom. Angels roamed within, believers praying devoutly. It was like a perfect kingdom. This was the end of the Tao of faith, and the perfect kingdom that existed in the imagination, the eternal divine kingdom. However, God was far from reaching this level. Not only him, but no one who cultivated the Tao of faith had ever reached this height. Therefore, the eternal divine kingdom only existed in the world of celestials. Right now, God was unleashing the kingdom he had spent his entire life to create, heaven. As soon as heaven opened, Feng Zichen's sword momentum was immediately obstructed. The angels in heaven fought desperately to block it. One by one, the angels threw themselves at the oncoming Hongmeng sword light like moths to a flame. They did all they could to delay its advance and buy time for God to break through. It was because of these angels' reckless actions that the speed of Hongming's sword light was indeed affected. It didn't immediately cut through heaven, but instead became entangled with the angels and believers inside. Feng Zichen only watched in silence. Though the sword's momentum was obstructed, it didn't affect its power. On the contrary, as more and more angels were slain, Hongming's sword light grew stronger and stronger. If the primordial sword radiance was allowed to destroy the heavenly hall, the sword's power would increase to a frightening level. Even if God successfully ascended to the origin Dao realm, it would be able to kill him with a single strike. However, Feng Zichen obviously wouldn't let God break through. Above and below the Dao of origin realm were two completely different concepts. The former was immortal and indestructible, while the latter was coexisting with heaven and earth. The difference was too great. If God broke through to the Dao of origin realm, even if he was killed by Feng Zichen, there was still a chance for him to be resurrected in the future. Therefore, he couldn't let God break through to the Dao of origin realm. Even so, Feng Zichen still didn't stop God from breaking through because he wanted to see God's trump card. Chapter 905. As a remnant of the supreme world in the past, God's means were an eye-opener for Feng Zichen. Soon, God's power reached the limit of the sage-to-be, half a step into the primordial chaos. Then, it stopped advancing. But even so, it was amazing enough. In a short time, God had advanced from the limit of Daluo Jingxian to the limit of the sage-to-be. This cultivation speed was extremely fast. Even though Feng Zichen was experienced and knowledgeable, it was the first time he had seen someone cultivate so fast. God had really surprised him. After reaching the limit of the sage-to-be, God felt that he could crush Feng Zichen. He suddenly stepped forward and made a rumbling sound, which made the chaos tremble. I said, "Let there be light." Rumble. A ray of bright and holy light suddenly appeared in the chaos, dispelling the darkness and bringing light to the world. The light had incredible power, as if it could split the world. In the blink of an eye, it broke through the boundless chaos and appeared in front of Feng Zichen to kill him. Very good. Seeing this, Feng Zichen smiled slightly and struck out with his palm. The endless universe was born and died in his hand. The mighty and terrifying power collided with the divine light that was rushing toward him. As a result, Feng Zichen was knocked back and his right hand was penetrated by the divine light. This was normal. The power of Feng Zichen's Hongmeng incarnation was only the limit of the Taoist priests. Compared to God, it was a whole realm lower. It was already amazing that he could survive a blow from God. What more could he ask for? To defeat God, who was a whole realm higher. How was that possible? After Daluo, no one could defeat an opponent who was a whole realm higher without the help of external forces. The Chaos Demon God couldn't, and neither could Feng Zichen. God didn't show any mercy. He made a sound again, which made the chaos tremble. Those who believe in me and love me will live forever. Those who resist me, those who disobey me, they will all be destroyed, they will all sink into oblivion. As soon as he finished speaking, a mysterious, and indescribable power suddenly crossed the boundless time and space and descended upon Feng Zichen. It wanted to drag him into the abyss of death and sink him into eternal oblivion. At the same time, chaos began to reject Feng Zichen as if he had committed a heinous crime and wanted to banish and destroy him. This is the Fortune Shrine's great prophecy technique. Didn't this ability disappear along with the destruction of the Temple of Fate? How did you learn great prophecy? Where did you learn it? At this moment, the goddess of life of the previous generation actually let out a cry of surprise when she saw God unleash this divine power. Clearly, she had recognized the origin of this divine power. The great prophecy technique was a peerless divine ability of the Temple of Fortune. Feng Zichen knew that the Temple of Fortune was the most powerful force in this world. It was a well-deserved overlord who ruled this world in the last reincarnation. The owner of the Temple of Fortune, the great god of fortune, was the existence who controlled the fate of all the creatures in this world. He was supreme, and his status was equal to that of ancestor Hongjun in the untainted land. However, the strength of the god of fortune was far beyond that of ancestor Hongjun. He was an existence who was about to peep into eternity, and his strength was second only to that of God Pangu. Unfortunately, the entire Temple of Fortune, including this existence, had been destroyed in the tribulation of reincarnation. The divine power left by such an existence was naturally terrifying. The so-called Great Prophecy technique was to make all his prophecies come true through the endless power of faith, so that he could achieve the effect of his wishes. It was a bit similar to the untainted land's law, but more powerful. Rumble. Endless power came from all directions, the past, the future, and the endless dimensions, drowning Feng Zichen and obliterating him. Feng Zichen knew that with the power of his incarnation he could not block the attack of the Great Prophecy technique. Therefore, he simply gave up resisting and allowed this force to destroy him. He wanted to use this opportunity to comprehend the true meaning of nirvana. If he wanted to comprehend the way of nirvana, was there anything faster than being destroyed once? Only by personally falling into nirvana, experiencing the feeling of being destroyed, and struggling back from nirvana, could he truly master the way of nirvana. Just like how could he know the horror of death if he did not die once? This move was risky, but it was the fastest way to comprehend the way of nirvana. Once he succeeded, it would be better than countless years of hard work. What's more, how could there be no risks in cultivation? Cultivation was to fight against the heavens. If there were no risks, how could one achieve great success? Soon, Feng Zichen's body, soul, and true spirit were all destroyed by the power of God and returned to nothingness. Only the eternal source in his body was not destroyed and floated quietly in the void. On the other hand, Feng Zichen's will had fallen into an endless darkness with no end in sight. And this darkness was eating away at his will step by step. But in this endless darkness, there was a purple stream of light constantly flickering. It was like a bright light in the dark night, guiding Feng Zichen's way back. That was the eternal source, and it was also Feng Zichen's confidence that he dared to risk falling into nirvana. He knew that with the eternal source, he would not die no matter what. With the eternal source in front of him, God seemed very excited, but he did not have the chance to go forward. Because the Hongmeng sword light left behind by Feng Zichen had broken through the defense of heaven and arrived in front of him, wanting to destroy his vitality, true spirit, and everything. I said, I will not be hurt. I said, no power can hurt me. I said, all power that hurts me will disappear. The moment the sword light struck, God sensed danger and made several prophecies in a row, trying to block the sword. But it was useless. These prophecies, other than making the Hongmeng sword light more powerful, could not protect God at all. Whoosh! The moment the sword light struck, God suddenly took out an illusory but real gem that emitted hundreds of millions of colors and placed it between his eyebrows. Clang! The sword light struck the gem with the sound of metal clashing, but it did not hurt God at all. This sword, which was enough to seriously injure a primordial chaos expert, was blocked by this mysterious gem. This is the Stone of Destiny, the gem embedded in the Scepter of Destiny, the treasure of chaos, the embodiment of the mystery of the Great Tao, the protection of destiny, an existence similar to the ancestral tree. Didn't it die with the great god of destiny? Why is it in your hands? The previous life goddess felt that she must be hallucinating. First, she saw the long-lost Great Prophecy technique, and now she saw the Stone of Destiny that should have been destroyed. It was really too shocking. Chapter 906. Sigh. Long before the samsara tribulation erupted, the god of destiny foresaw his own fate. He was destined to perish in the tribulation. Although the god of destiny could control the fate of all living beings, he could not control his own fate. Therefore, he perished in the samsara tribulation. No matter what method he used, he could not survive. But how could an existence like him be willing to be manipulated by fate and accept the fate of perishing? He wanted to live and cultivate to the realm of eternity, so he wanted to resist fate. In his final moments, the god of destiny used his supreme divine ability to imprint a trace of his mark into the Stone of Destiny. Then he merged the Stone of Destiny into the heart of the world tree, attempting to use this method to escape the samsara tribulation. Unfortunately, he failed in the end. Not only did he perish, but even the world tree withered with him. The heart of the world tree was eroded by the power of nirvana and was completely destroyed. The stone of destiny and the mark of the god of destiny were also destroyed and completely disappeared. However, perhaps it was a gift from fate. At the moment when the stone of destiny was about to be completely destroyed, a ray of eternal light erupted and shone on the stone of destiny. Under the reflection of the eternal light, the stone of destiny avoided the samsara tribulation and was able to retain part of it. However, the mark of the god of destiny in the stone of destiny was severely damaged and lost all vitality. After countless years, I, the great god, was born. Carrying the will of fate, I was born under the illumination of the eternal light. I am the son of the god of destiny, so I have the inheritance of the temple of destiny and master the great prophecy technique. Similarly, I am the natural master of this world and am destined to rule this world. A grand voice came from God's mouth as if he was singing, telling the goddess of life his origin. According to his words, his status was indeed quite high. He was equivalent to the three pure ones of the primordial era, a natural saint. Goddess of life, since you know my origin, you should follow the guidance of fate and submit to me and become my most devout believer. God wanted to subdue the goddess of life and make her provide him with the power of faith to increase his strength. However, the goddess of life obviously did not fall for this. The goddess of life replied in a similarly grand voice, "The god of destiny, the natural master? How laughable! He is just a thief who steals the authority of heaven and earth and the fate of all living beings. Since when was it his turn to be the master of heaven and earth? Our ancestor, the great goddess of life of the first generation, the supreme deity who walked out of the world tree, was the true master of this realm and brought vitality to the world." At the same time, the previous goddess of life was also using her divine powers to attack God. In the Church of Life, Feng Jie and the other two were speechless. That world has already been destroyed, and you guys are still here fighting for the title of Orthodox. How boring! Although the former goddess of life was no match for God, she was still a pre-saint. In addition, she had two pre-saint helpers and the support of the Temple of Life. With all these powers added together, she might not be weaker than God. This time, the life goddess's side was truly suppressing the enemy with their overwhelming numbers. Sensing the danger, God steeled himself and swallowed the stone of destiny. You guys forced me to do this. I originally wanted to accumulate for a while more before breaking through. After eating the stone of destiny, God's stagnant aura grew again with an irresistible momentum toward the level of primordial chaos Daluo Jinxian. There was no doubt that if no one stopped him, God would complete his transformation in a few hours at most and cultivate into primordial chaos Daluo Jinxian. The stone of destiny, when placed in the current chaos, was equivalent to the origin of chaos treasures and the foundation of chaos treasures. It was like someone who swallowed supreme treasures such as the Bell of Chaos and the Taiji diagram. Naturally, their strength would be greatly improved, and entering the realm of primordial chaos was nothing at all. Oh no, he's about to break through. Stop him. The reaction of the previous goddess of life was not slow. Seeing this scene, she directly blasted out the divine powers she had prepared, wanting to interrupt God's breakthrough. However, it was useless. Before the attack of the previous goddess of life could get close to God, it was blocked by the powerful aura emanating from his body. Seeing this scene, a hint of ruthlessness appeared in the eyes of the previous goddess of life. She knew that once God succeeded in breaking through, not only would the eternal source fall into his hands, but even everyone in the Temple of Life would be converted by him, lose their sense of self, and become his most devout believers. Therefore, the goddess of life decided to go all out. A jade green gem that was blooming with the luster of life appeared in her hand. This was the gem of life, a treasure on the same level as the stone of destiny. Since the god of destiny could leave behind the gem of destiny, the goddess of life naturally had a way to leave behind the gem of life. After eating the gem of life, even if the previous goddess of life could not enter the realm of primordial chaos, she could temporarily obtain the power of primordial chaos, and escape would not be a problem. As expected, a starving camel is still bigger than a horse. Even if this realm has experienced the samsara tribulation, there are still many good things left behind. In the deepest part of the void, an imposing figure had appeared at some point and was commenting on everything that had happened here. This imposing figure was enveloped in the radiance of human Tao. He wore a crown on his head, and the phantom of 10,000 spirits appeared. He wore a royal robe embroidered with 9 nine-clawed divine dragons that were baring their fangs and brandishing their claws. They looked very lifelike, as if they could pounce out at any time. Above his head, there was a dazzling divine ring that bloomed with the radiance of human Tao, as if it was formed by the convergence of endless human Tao beliefs. That was the divine ring of human Tao, which symbolized the protection of human Tao and the blessing of all spirits. It could block any attack below the 3rd level of primordial chaos. This was an existence that was favored by human Tao. Who else could it be other than Feng Zichen? That's right, as early as when he obtained the eternal source, Feng Zichen's Gaochen clone had already left the primordial chaos and came here to hide in the dark. His purpose was to prevent accidents from happening. The eternal source was so important that it could not be lost. If it were not for the fact that his original body could not leave the boundless starry sky, the one who came here at this moment would be Great Emperor Ziwei, whose strength was infinitely close to Daluo Jinxian's. Just as God was about to succeed in breaking through, Feng Zichen finally made his move. Freeze. As soon as the word fell, the chaos responded. Endless power surged and acted on God's body, suppressing the momentum of his breakthrough. It was one of the supreme divine abilities of the primordial world. It was a mighty figure who controlled the world and had the power to seize life and death. Chapter 907. Retreat. With another word, the boundless chaos trembled, causing the great Tao to resonate. It actually evolved the mighty power of time and space to act on God's body. In an instant, the power on God's body began to retreat, returning to the body of the Gem of Destiny. It was also at this time that Feng Zichen's imposing figure walked out of the void and appeared in front of everyone. Master! As soon as they saw Feng Zichen, Feng Jie and the other 2 in the Temple of Life shouted in surprise. Feng Zichen, who had manifested as a human, was the master that Feng Jie and the others were familiar with. As for the Goddess of Life and the others, they were also very shocked. Although they knew that Feng Zichen was very strong, they still couldn't help but be shocked after seeing it for themselves. Smiling and nodding at them, Feng Zichen stretched out his hand and imprisoned God in front of him. At the same time, the Gem of Destiny that was swallowed by God also began to tremble violently. In the end, it directly pierced through God's body and flew out, landing in Feng Zichen's hand. The Gem of Destiny was the supreme treasure of the previous reincarnation tribulation. It was comparable to the Chaos Bead, Panga's Axe, and other treasures. How could Feng Zichen not be curious? Since he had encountered it, he definitely had to get his hands on it and study it. Not in a hurry to study the Gem of Destiny, Feng Zichen put it away, then looked at God and said, "You are the supreme powerhouse of the previous reincarnation, the living being formed from the mark of the great God of Destiny? To be honest, I am very curious about the great Tao of the previous reincarnation. It is definitely different from the current great Tao system. You are formed from the true spirit of the great God of Destiny, so you must have inherited a part of the mark of the previous reincarnation. Therefore, I will not kill you. I will keep you alive so that I can spy on the mysteries of the previous reincarnation from you." As he spoke, Feng Zichen pressed down with his palm, directly suppressing and sealing God, who had no power to resist. With his current strength, an ordinary primordial chaos Daluo Jinxian could easily suppress him, let alone a cultivator like God who had not yet reached primordial chaos. After sealing God, Feng Zichen did not stop. Instead, he released his divine thought and spread it in all directions, shrouding the entire area of chaos. Withdraw. In the next moment, Feng Zichen used his divine power to capture all the nearby creatures and seal them together with his Dharma power. These were living beings who had escaped from the apocalypse after the Western world was destroyed. Logically speaking, when the world was destroyed, These living beings that had yet to reach the primordial chaos realm should have been destroyed along with the world. However, not only did they survive, but they also escaped into the chaos. This undoubtedly meant that they had treasures in their hands. It was with the power of these treasures that they were able to survive the apocalypse. It wasn't easy for Feng Zichen to come all the way here, so he couldn't take it back empty-handed. Since he had met them, he naturally had to collect them. These treasures were fated with him. These creatures were also fated with him. As living beings left behind from the previous reincarnation tribulation, their origins and body structure were definitely different from the living beings of the primordial world. That was the power of another system. By studying their origin marks, Feng Zichen might be able to come into contact with the mysteries of the great Tao of creation in advance. One had to know that the realm after Wuji Daluo Jingxian was called the ultimate realm of creation. Ultimate was the limit. At this realm, one had basically reached the limit of cultivation and had completely grasped the essence of creation. With a thought, one could create and destroy a world, create countless living beings out of thin air, and also destroy countless living beings. Of course, even the current Feng Zichen could do this. However, he couldn't turn an ordinary object into a connate spirit treasure with a thought. He could turn a connate spirit treasure into an ordinary object. What did that mean? In the hands of an expert of the ultimate realm of creation, any stone or branch on the ground could be transformed into a connate spirit treasure. This was the power to change the essence of things. With a thought, one could give all things unimaginable power. One could also deprive all things of their extraordinary power and make them mortal. With a thought, an expert of the ultimate realm of creation could even beat primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian into the mortal world. Although it couldn't erase his essence, it could make him lose all his power and live as a mortal. Not old, not dead, not destroyed. This was simply worse than death. Imagine, a person, a moment ago, was still the high and mighty primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian. In the next moment he lost all his power and became immortal. This huge difference was enough to make one go crazy. More importantly, he wouldn't die. To mortals, this was a good thing. But to an existence who was once high and mighty, this was endless torture. The ultimate realm of creation was the pinnacle of cultivation and could be said to be omnipotent. If one improved further, one would turn into chaos. One would become chaos, containing everything and being omnipotent. Therefore, after the ultimate realm of creation was chaos. This wasn't a realm, but a state. Chaos, 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 yin and yang, clear and turbid, be it opposing or unified, they were all mixed together. He had no end and no end. Therefore, those who cultivated to the chaos realm had no end or limit to their power. They had transcended all concepts and completely separated themselves from life and death. They were all chaos, so how could they talk about life and death? Chaos wouldn't die. The only thing that could defeat chaos was chaos. Chaos was the beginning of everything. If the ultimate realm of creation was the end of cultivation, then chaos was the end of all living beings. There was no way to advance. After cultivating chaos, one's power could continue to increase without a limit. If one wanted to improve, one could only transcend and reach the realm of nothing. Only then could one live forever. Yes, the realm of eternity was known as nothing. When one's strength reached this level, not only could one live forever, but they could also be omnipotent. What Pangu wanted to break through was the realm of nothing. But he couldn't understand this realm. Logically speaking, since he had cultivated to nothing, then nothing existed. How could he be eternal? Pangu didn't understand, so he failed to break through. He could only open up the primordial world, evolve the eternal world, and then prove the realm of eternity. Feng Zichen didn't understand either, but that was too far away from him. It wasn't something he should be thinking about. Now, what he should be thinking about was how to break through the realm of creation. Feng Zichen was already confident about the realm of Wuji Daluo and could break through at any time. But he still had no idea how to cultivate the ultimate realm of creation. But the countless living beings in this world gave Feng Zichen a shortcut. As long as he understood the true meaning of life of these living beings and compared it with the path of creation of the primordial world, Feng Zichen would be able to comprehend the essence of creation and break through to the ultimate realm of creation. The source of eternity was an opportunity. The living beings and Dharma treasures of this world were also opportunities. One was for the present, while the other was for the future. Chapter 908. In front of Feng Zichen, the remaining creatures in this world were suppressed and sealed by him without any resistance. Even the treasures left behind by their ancestors in the past were useless in front of powerful strength. In the vast Western world, there were 9 supreme temples, and a total of 9 origin gems were left. At this moment, except for the gem of life, the other 8 had all fallen into Feng Zichen's hands. Keep! With a wave of his sleeve, Feng Zichen took away the eternal origin and was about to leave with the Temple of Life. However, all of a sudden he frowned. He had sensed a wisp of life from the destroyed world. With a thought, Feng Zichen captured the wisp of vitality. When he held it in his hand, he saw that it was a crystal-clear seed. Feng Zichen recognized this seed. It was the seed of the world tree, as expected of the existence that can support half of the eternal world. Even the reincarnation tribulation can't completely extinguish your vitality. Instead, you took the opportunity to be reborn and left a seed. Unfortunately, you have been eroded by the power of nirvana for too long. Even if you are reborn, you can't live. After studying it carefully for a while, Feng Zichen found that although the seed of the world tree still had vitality, it would never take root and germinate. This was the curse of reincarnation. It was destined to die. However, this thing was not completely useless. Merging this seed with the world tree of the untainted land would definitely make it undergo an unimaginable transformation. After that, the road to the half-step eternal realm would be smooth and smooth. There was even hope to see the eternal realm. Putting away the seed, Feng Zichen released his divine thoughts and carefully searched the chaos here again. After confirming that there was nothing left, he turned to Feng Jie and the other 2 and said to them, "Let's go. We will go to the untainted land." As soon as he finished speaking, the chaos changed. The power of time and space evolved and drowned everyone. What followed was a grotesque and variegated scenery. When Feng Jie and the others came back to their senses, they had already arrived at the edge of the untainted land, in the chaos outside the sky. Everyone looked up and saw the vast world surrounded by countless small worlds. Their hearts were full of shock. This was especially so for Feng Jie and the other 2. They exclaimed in disbelief, "This is the primordial world? Why did he become like this?" After all, when they left, the great Magi-Demon War had not yet broken out, and the primordial world was still in the form of a primitive continent. However, is the primordial world still the same as before? It reigned supreme in the 3 dimensions and was protected by a myriad of worlds. It was even vaster and more powerful than it was in the past. Looking at his disciples' shocked look, Feng Zichen felt very proud. After all, it was his doing that made the untainted land what it was today. In the past, Pangu created the world. Today, Great Emperor Ziwei was here to change the world. Feng Zichen was not in a hurry to bring Feng Jie and the others into the 3 realms. Instead, he stopped in outer space as if he was waiting for someone. Feng Zichen did not have to wait for long. At a certain moment, he felt his mind go into a trance. Then, he left his body and came to a mysterious and unknown space. This place was filled with the source of chaos as if there was no end to it. And in the source of chaos, there was an endless flow of mystery, blooming with Tao light. It was as if one could attain Tao with just a glance. In addition, Feng Zichen also discovered that in the deepest part of this space, there were actually wisps of purple air currents surging. At first, Feng Zichen thought that it was the Hongmeng purple qi. However, he soon realized that something was wrong. The purple qi actually carried the aura of eternity. The purple qi was not the source of eternity, but the source of the great path. It was also a power at the eternal level. This was the space where Pangu's will was located. It was Pangu who took action and brought Feng Zichen's will here. Only Pangu, the supreme existence, could condense the source of eternity. That's right. In the current primordial world, other than the great god Pangu, no one could quietly take away Feng Zichen's mind. Even the Tao ancestor couldn't do it in person. Although he didn't notice the existence of anyone, Feng Zichen felt that an indescribable gaze fell on him. He was very familiar with this gaze. It belonged to the great god Pangu. Bowing to the void, Feng Zichen said, "Zichen greets the great god Pangu." No one appeared, but a supreme will woke up and said in a loud and clear voice, "You have the aura of eternity and the aura of reincarnation. Where have you been?" Without hiding anything, Feng Zichen told Pangu everything about the Western world. In front of such an existence, there was no need to hide anything, because your thoughts couldn't be hidden from him at all. When he asked you, he naturally knew the answer in his heart. Therefore, lying and hiding were all meaningless. The world left behind from the previous reincarnation? You're so lucky to encounter such a world. It seems that it won't be long before you can cultivate to the end of the creation realm. The creatures left behind from the previous reincarnation are the shortcut to the end of the creation realm. Back then, when I was traveling in the chaos, I also found a world that had survived the reincarnation tribulation. It was because I studied the creatures there that I was able to cultivate to the end of the creation realm in the shortest time possible and leave a group of chaos demon gods behind me. Hearing Pangu's sigh, Feng Zichen wasn't surprised. Pangu was the son of the great Tao. The opportunities he had obtained along the way were absolutely unimaginable. Even Feng Zichen couldn't compare to him. He was a legend among legends, a myth among myths, and an existence regarded as a myth by immortals. Of course, Feng Zichen wouldn't be so naive to think that the previous reincarnation only left behind a broken world. How long was a reincarnation from the beginning to the end? It was unimaginably long. It was an indescribable period of time. And this reincarnation, with Pangu's birth as the starting point, was only the beginning. No one knew how long it would take for it to end. Who knew that in the future, another world would rise up? This was something unpredictable. Often, after a reincarnation, there would be many worlds left behind for various reasons. Of course, these worlds were like a speck of dust in the universe in the chaos. They were abnormally small. To be able to find such a world, one must be loved by the great Tao. Otherwise, one wouldn't have such strong luck. At this moment, Pangu's will spoke again. "Feng Zichen, you're very good. Really good. You're better than I expected. Your appearance has brought too many variables to the primordial world. It has truly changed the future of the primordial world. Bringing you to the primordial world was my best decision." Chapter 909. Feng Zichen seemed very calm when Pangu talked about his origin. He had already expected that the reason why he could come to the untainted land was most likely related to Pangu. After all, in the untainted land, only Pangu could go against the flow of time. Moreover, there was no love without a reason in the world. When Feng Zichen was weak, Pangu often helped him. This was obviously unreasonable. He was neither the three pure ones nor the ancestor of sorcery. Why did Pangu treat him differently? The reason was that Feng Zichen was brought to the untainted land by him. In addition, Feng Zichen performed well, so he took care of him. Pangu's words only confirmed Feng Zichen's guess. Of course, he was not surprised. However, although Feng Zichen guessed the result, he did not know much about the process and cause of this matter. In particular, he did not understand how the primordial chaos Tao Bell, a supreme treasure that was born from the primordial chaos, came to him. As if seeing Feng Zichen's doubts, Pangu's will said, "I know you have a lot of doubts in your heart. Now that I've come to see you, I'll solve them for you one by one. Countless years ago, I had an epiphany in the chaos and decided to open the sky to prove my Tao. That was why there was the tribulation of opening the sky. However, after the opening of the sky and earth, I still did not see any signs of proving my Tao. Therefore, I separated a wisp of divine thought and followed the long river of time and space to check the future of the untainted land. The future is not fixed, so it is changeable. However, when one's strength reaches my level, he is infinitely close to omniscience and omnipotence. With a thought, no matter how many futures there are in the untainted land, I can sense them one by one. Then, I found that all the futures in the untainted land eventually led to the same ending, which was to be destroyed in the immeasurable calamity. In other words, I failed to attain the Tao in the end. I didn't rely on the primordial world to attain the eternal realm. Naturally, I'm unwilling to accept this. I've paid such a great price, and even the body of the way that I've refined for countless years has been destroyed. How could I allow myself to fail? At that time, I knew that I had to make a change. I had to find an anomaly in the world to change the destiny of the primordial world. But how could it be so easy to find an outlier? I've been deducing for a long time, but I still haven't found one. In the end, I decided to create an anomaly. Hearing this, Feng Zichen could already feel Pangu's domineering aura. Since there was no anomaly in the world, he would create one himself. Pangu's will continued. From then on, I began to use my magic to constantly search for the fated ones in the future. I pulled their souls back to the beginning of the world and tried to use them to change the fate of the untainted land. Unfortunately, without exception, they all failed. The destiny set by the Great Tao cannot be changed. Basically, these people died for various reasons before they could grow up. Only you, the person who was favored by Hong Meng, managed to survive. You turned into an anomaly and completely changed the future of the untainted land. Hearing this, Feng Zichen understood that the appearance of Hongmeng Daozhong had nothing to do with Pangu. It was really an opportunity that belonged to him. It was also because of this item that he was able to survive and not die under the scheme of the Great Tao. Hongmeng, that is a power on the same level as the Great Tao. Not to mention me, even the Great Tao can't control it. Therefore, Hongmeng Daozhong, that is an opportunity that you obtained yourself. It has nothing to do with anyone else. You are a person who was favored by Hongmeng. Like me, you are an existence that has the potential to achieve eternity. Therefore, I treated you differently and supported you in every way possible. I also secretly guided you to destroy the plan of the primordial demon god and find the broken world that originated from the previous reincarnation. The Western world was actually found by Feng Zichen under the guidance of Pangu. In fact, thinking about it carefully, there was nothing strange. Since Pangu could see through the future, he naturally knew that the Western world would collide with the untainted land countless years later. In this way, he would be able to easily find the broken Western world by using this method. After listening to Pangu's words, Feng Zichen's doubts were all solved. However, this was only his doubts about his origin. He also had doubts about his cultivation. It was not easy to meet Pangu, so he naturally did not want to give up this opportunity. Feng Zichen asked, "Great God, how should I use this eternal source to bring me the greatest help?" Feng Zichen did not understand the eternal source at all. Even if he got it, he would only refine it. He did not know how to make the best use of it. After a moment of silence, Pangu's will said, "Integrate the eternal source into the origin mark. In this way, your origin will have a trace of eternal characteristics and will not be disturbed by external tribulations. Even if the chaos demon god curses you with the power of the great path again, it will be difficult to hurt you. In addition, the origin mark will always be baptized by the eternal source, which will also help you enter the half-step primordial chaos realm in the future. As for breaking through to the eternal realm, don't even think about it. If the eternal source is really so useful, I would have broken through long ago. Why would I need to split heaven and earth?" It could be seen that Pangu did not lack the eternal source. In this space, Feng Zichen saw many eternal source existences. This scene really shocked Feng Zichen. At the same time, it also greatly reduced the value of the eternal source in his heart. Pangu's will spoke again and continued to break Feng Zichen's fantasy. "The eternal source is not as precious as you think. You should go back and see your Daluo heaven. He already has some eternal characteristics. If the untainted world can go further and feed back to the Daluo heaven, it will be enough to make him transform and derive the eternal source." The Daluo heaven was the highest heaven in the untainted world. It was also the Tao world. It was known as the source of all Tao. It was the highest embodiment of all Tao in the untainted world. It was also the place where the heavenly way evolved the eternal world. In the imagination of the heavenly way, the power of the whole world was used to support the Daluo heaven and let it grow to the point of eternity. Then, the power of eternity would be fed back to the untainted world, causing the whole world to transform and become the eternal world. Speaking of which, Feng Zichen did not spend much effort on the Daluo heaven over the years. With Pangu's guidance, Feng Zichen replied, "Thank you for your guidance, great God. When Zichen returns, I will integrate my power and try my best to evolve the Daluo heaven." This time, Feng Zichen planned to lay his cards on the table. He would integrate all his incarnations so that he could enter the limitless realm. At the same time, he would also attain the celestial emperor karmic rank and become the real lord of the untainted world. He would control the heavens and earth and rule the myriad worlds. P.S. Today, double monthly votes, but this garbage update, I don't have the face to ask for monthly votes. Sigh. Chapter 9-10. You should have done so long ago. The way of cultivation is to be brave and diligent. You have been attacking the mind. How can you have great achievements? Of course, when you are weak, there is nothing wrong with using reasonable strategies to protect yourself and seek the greatest benefits for yourself at the same time. But when your strength reaches your level, even if you are not invincible in the untainted land, you can be ranked in the top 3. If you still attack the mind, I am afraid it will be difficult for you to have any great achievements in the future. Obviously, Pangu had been secretly paying attention to Feng Zichen. He knew what he had done very well and reprimanded him impolitely. You are right. Zichen knows he is wrong. After being reprimanded by Pangu, Feng Zichen just bowed his head and admitted his mistake. You can make the arrangements for the visitor from the alien world. After saying that, Pangu's aura gradually faded away. At the same time, Feng Zichen's mind began to return and left this mysterious and unknown space. Thank you, great God. Before disappearing, Feng Zichen said. With Pangu's words, the people of the Fane of Life were no longer illegal residents and would not be targeted by the way of heaven. They could live in the 3 realms like native creatures. The moment his mind returned to his body, Feng Zichen was in a trance, as if everything he had just experienced was a dream. However, the additional memories in his heart reminded him that everything he had just experienced was real. He really met the great god Pangu and received his guidance. At this moment, only a moment had passed since Feng Zichen left. Even with Feng Zichen's current strength, it was difficult for him to find the slightest trace of Pangu's attack. Powerful as he was no different from a mortal in front of Pangu. He was still too weak. Feng Zichen's inflated heart because of the eternal source disappeared in a flash. He turned to the people around him and said, "Let's go back to the untainted land." As he spoke, Feng Zichen had already led everyone through the heaven and earth barrier and entered the jurisdiction of the heavenly Tao. In an instant, the heavenly Tao reacted and appeared in front of Feng Zichen and the others. An expressionless Taoist in a purple Taoist robe appeared in the chaos without any warning. This was the heavenly Tao Hongjun, which was also the primordial heavenly Tao. Taking a deep look at the temple of life behind Feng Zichen, Tiandao Hongjuan's eyes suddenly bloomed with a faint light, sweeping across everyone in the hall. Seeing this, Feng Zichen explained, "Don't resist. This is the mark that the heavenly Tao has placed on you. Only in this way can all of you live in the primordial world. Otherwise, all of you will be regarded as invaders by the heavenly Tao and be hunted down endlessly by the cultivators of my world." Feng Zichen was not worried at all that the heavenly Tao would attack the people in the Temple of Life. Their existence had already been recognized by the great Pangu. Although the heavenly Tao was powerful, it could not disobey the orders of Pangu. At this moment, the heavenly Tao was just placing a mark on them and taking away a wisp of their original life aura to give birth to a destined star. In the untainted land, after every living creature was born, a wisp of original life aura would manifest in the long river of fate and turn into a destined star. It would flow with the river until it reached the realm of the Taoist priests. Since the people of the Temple of Life had decided to integrate into the untainted land, they naturally had to enjoy the same treatment as the living creatures of the untainted land. In the long river of fate, they could manifest their destined stars. Originally, the living goddesses wanted to resist, but after listening to Feng Zichen's words, they silently withdrew their magic and allowed the heavenly Tao to take away their original life aura. However, they were existences who had reached the realm of the Taoist priests. Unlike others, this was just a process for them. With a thought, they could take back their destined stars. After a while, the heavenly Tao finished marking and nodded with satisfaction. Then, it took everyone's original life aura and left this place. However, although the heavenly Tao had left, Tao Ancestor Hongjun stayed. In Tao Ancestor Hongjun's eyes, there was a flash of light, and then several emotions appeared. Seeing this, Feng Zichen naturally knew that the Tao Ancestor had awakened. He hurriedly stepped forward and bowed. Zichen greets the Tao Ancestor. Feng Zichen bowed to the Tao Ancestor. It had nothing to do with cultivation, but as a junior, he respected the Tao Ancestor. Zichen. After silently chanting Feng Zichen's name, Tao Ancestor Hongjun suddenly said, "Should I call you Go Chen, Lei Zhe, or Ziwei?" Feng Zichen smiled and said, "Tao Ancestor, you can call me whatever you want." Zichen doesn't care. As long as Tao Ancestor is happy. He was very indifferent to the fact that the Tao Ancestor had seen through his identity. Of course, he was indifferent. Firstly, he had already expected this. After he was mentally prepared, he naturally would not be surprised. Tao Ancestor Hongjun was a figure who played tricks in the primordial world. Although Feng Zichen had hidden himself very well, if Tao Ancestor Hongjun had the intention, he would find clues sooner or later and discover Feng Zichen's true body. That was because Tao Ancestor Hongjun was very strong and his thoughts were very deep. Therefore, in front of him, there was no way to hide any schemes and tricks. Feng Zichen had hidden himself very well, but he might not be able to hide it from him. Secondly, with Feng Zichen's current strength, he was no longer afraid of Tao Ancestor Hongjun. Although he could not defeat him, he could definitely protect himself. Since Tao Ancestor Hongjun was no longer dangerous to him, why would Feng Zichen be afraid of him knowing? If he discovered it, so be it. What's the big deal? You're so honest today that the poor way is at a loss. In that case, are you not going to hide it anymore? Tao Ancestor Hongjun was not happy because of Feng Zichen's honesty. Instead, he frowned and looked very worried. Indeed, I've hidden it for too long. It's been so long that I almost forgot my plan. Now that I've received the guidance of the great Pangu, I suddenly understood that scheming is just a small Tao. Only being upright is the great Tao. Since he had made a decision in his heart, he would not change it. Therefore, Feng Zichen had completely no worries and was very frank. He even revealed his future plans to Tao Ancestor Hongjun. Now, at the time of great changes, a real celestial emperor should indeed appear in the primordial world. If I become the emperor, the first thing I will do is to unify the primordial world. Whether it's the demon race, the wizard race, or even the Shen men and the demon sects, they will all have to submit to the heavenly court and be dispatched by the heavenly court. I want to integrate all the forces of the primordial world and work hard to strengthen the strength of the primordial world. Then, I will use this force to go on an expedition to the 3,000 worlds and wipe out the hidden danger of the primordial world, the chaos demon god that should have disappeared long ago, and seal it again. As long as I defeat the chaos demon god and integrate the origins of the 3,000 worlds into the primordial world will definitely be promoted again. Chapter 9-11. At that time, I will complete an unprecedented feat in the history of the untainted land. I can also take advantage of the opportunity to break through to a higher realm. Moreover, at that time, I will not be the only one who will benefit. When the untainted land is promoted, all living beings will benefit. Let's not talk about you, Tao Ancestor. Let's talk about the 7 saints and the other primordial chaos mighty figures. With the opportunity of the primordial world's advancement, they might be able to comprehend the mysteries of Wuji and advance to become Wuji Golden Immortals. At that time, the untainted land will enter its true heyday. It will no longer be a dream for everyone to be like a dragon. Feng Zichen's words made the Tao ancestor a little excited. But soon he calmed down. Feng Zichen's idea was still too idealistic. How could the 3,000 great worlds and the Chaos Demon Gods be so easy to take down? Although the Chaos Demon Gods were not as strong as before, 3,000 Chaos Demon Gods were equivalent to 3,000 primordial Chaos Daluo Jingxian. Without the protection of the great god Pangu, the Chaos Demon Gods would be able to defeat the untainted land with just this force alone. Not to mention, there were a few Chaos Demon Gods with unfathomable strength outside the untainted land in the Great Chaos. They were also concerned about the great god Pangu. Otherwise, they would have rushed into the untainted land and devoured all living beings. To deal with the Chaos Demon Gods, the untainted land could only take its time. Feng Zichen's plan was too rash and could easily provoke a strong backlash from the Chaos Demon Gods. Therefore, although Tao ancestor Hong Jun was tempted by Feng Zichen's words, that was all he could do. He was not optimistic about Feng Zichen's plan. However, Tao ancestor Hong Jun would not say anything. It was a good thing that young people were motivated. They should not be suppressed. In addition, it was useless for him to object. Now that Feng Zichen had become powerful, in terms of strength and status, he was not inferior to him at all. If they really fought, the Chaos Demonic God would definitely take advantage of the situation, not to mention the outcome of the battle. It was not worth it. Sighing, Tao ancestor Hong Jun said, "Poor Wei has her own ideas, and you have your own plans. Although poor Wei doesn't think highly of it, she won't stop you. I don't want the Chaos Fiend God to take advantage of us if we fall out. From now on, the management of the primordial land will be handed over to your majesty. As for me, I will be in charge of education. As the saying goes, there can't be two suns in the sky, and there can't be two lords on earth." Presently, the momentum of Feng Zichen becoming a heavenly emperor was already unstoppable. Tao ancestor Hong Jun was also unwilling to be the villain and forcefully obstruct Feng Zichen's path to becoming an emperor. Therefore, he took the initiative to give up his power. He stayed behind the scenes and took charge of the matter of teaching. He gave all the management rights of the primordial world to Feng Zichen. When Feng Zichen heard that, he hurriedly said, "I still have to thank Tao ancestor for granting my wish." Zichen became an emperor only to integrate the power of the primordial world to deal with the Chaos Fiend God. He will definitely not suppress the power of dissent. Yes, if the demons did not resist, he would definitely not suppress them. However, if the demons resisted, it would be a rebellion. Feng Zichen did not attack the demons to suppress them, but to suppress the rebellion. Feng Zichen was very clear about his plan. As for the matter of teaching, it belonged to Tao ancestor Hong Jun. No one could take it away. In the current primordial world, the immortal Tao was at its peak. There were many primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian, and they were all from the immortal Tao. Tao ancestor Hong Jun had such a powerful force in his hands. Who would dare to seize his authority? Even if Feng Zichen really became a heavenly emperor, he would not dare to fall out with Tao ancestor Hong Jun unless he planned to perish together with the Tao ancestor. Feng Zichen's position as heavenly emperor would not be stable once he fell out with the Tao ancestor. If more than 100 primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian were to cause trouble at the same time, what was the big deal about changing the heavenly emperor? It was too easy. Therefore, Tao ancestor Hong Jun was very happy to give Feng Zichen his authority. Ha! Tao ancestor Hong Jun laughed loudly and said, "After your majesty becomes the heavenly emperor, everything in the primordial world will be under your majesty's jurisdiction. Naturally, you can do whatever you want. Why do you need to promise me? The future generations will have their own blessings. I have not cared about the affairs of the world for many years. Naturally, I will not interfere in their matters. If they make things difficult for your majesty, you can just attack. I only hope that your majesty can leave some life for them on account of my many years of hard work. I will be satisfied." Tao ancestor Hong Jun had expressed his stance. After Feng Zichen became the heavenly emperor, he could do whatever he wanted. He would not care even if he attacked his disciple. However, there was a prerequisite. He could fight and cause trouble, but he could not kill him. He had to leave some life. He had to maintain the relationship between him and his disciple. Feng Zichen understood what Dao Ancestor Hongjun meant. That was what he should do. Even if he was in Dao Ancestor Hongjun's position, he would do the same. Therefore, he agreed readily. I will do as you say, Dao Ancestor. Seeing Feng Zichen agree, Dao Ancestor Hongjun chuckled and said, In that case, Poor Wei will help your majesty again. As he spoke, the Dao Ancestor did not do anything. In the direction of the heavenly courts, a supreme aura suddenly appeared. With a thought, Feng Zichen understood that Hao Tian was beginning to break through. He was going to achieve the Dao and take the crucial half-step to cultivate to the realm of primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian. After waiting for so many years, Hao Tian finally took the crucial half-step. To be honest, Feng Zichen was even more excited than Hao Tian. As long as Hao Tian successfully broke through, he could retreat and go to the chaos outside the heavens to open up the upper-class world and enter it to cultivate. And Great Emperor Ziwei could take the opportunity to inherit the throne and become the new celestial emperor. However, Dao Ancestor Hongjun's methods were also a little shocking. Hao Tian had been stuck at this juncture for many years, but he had never been able to break through. He did not know what method the Dao Ancestor used to allow him to break through in one fell swoop. This method was really shocking. With a thought, Feng Zichen was about to thank the Dao Ancestor, but he did not know when the Dao Ancestor had already left. This discovery made his heart tighten again. The strength of the Dao Ancestor was really getting more and more mysterious. He had probably walked a long way on the path of Wuji. Feng Zichen originally thought that after he broke through to the realm of Wuji Daluo Jingxian, he would be able to catch up to the Dao Ancestor. But now, it seemed that he still had a long way to go. After a while, Feng Zichen put away all his thoughts and began to rush in the direction of the three realms. Hao Tian had already begun to break through, so he should also be prepared to let Great Emperor Ziwei recover from his injuries so that he could smoothly complete the transfer of power to prevent any unknown changes from happening. To return to the three realms from the chaos outside the heavens, one had to pass through the boundless starry sky. It was also at this time that Feng Zichen secretly used his magic and sent the eternal source to Great Emperor Ziwei. As for himself, he brought Feng Jie and the others back to the central divine province. Chapter 9:12. As soon as the source of eternity fell into the boundless starry sky, it began to tremble violently. Then, the power of nirvana gathered around it and gradually condensed into Feng Zichen's figure. At this moment, Feng Zichen's Hongmeng avatar understood a trace of the mystery of the path of nirvana. It recovered from the path of nirvana and woke up once again. Bringing Feng Zichen's consciousness back, the power of nirvanic extermination around him suddenly changed. It actually gave birth to strands of creation chi. Creation and nirvana coexisted and evolved continuously. Then, they merged into one and turned into a purple Hongmeng Qi. The Hongmeng Qi was still the Hongmeng Qi, but its quality was higher than before. Its power was also greater. With a thought, Feng Zichen's Hongmeng avatar turned into a ray of Hongmeng Qi and came to the center of the boundless starry sky, where the Hongmeng Qi and the power of the Great Path were entangled. Refine. In his sea of consciousness, he visualized the ultimate. In an instant, the Hongmeng Qi that Feng Zichen had turned into began to spin rapidly and released a powerful suction force. It pulled in the surrounding power of the Great Path and Hongmeng Qi. At this moment, Feng Zichen wanted to use this Hongmeng avatar to recreate the Great Path physique. Whether it was the physical body of Great Emperor Ziwei, the power of the Great Path, or the Hongmeng Daozhong, he wanted to devour and refine them all. He wanted to transform them into the purest Hongmeng Qi to help him completely get rid of Panga's influence and cultivate the supreme Hongmeng Great Path physique. Rumble. After absorbing the power of the Great Path and the Hongmeng Qi, the vortex formed by the Hongmeng avatar grew rapidly. Gradually, it looked like the ultimate. And in the center of the Hongmeng vortex, Feng Zichen's life imprint was constantly bobbing up and down in the source of eternity, trying to refine it. Moreover, with the operation of the Hongmeng vortex, the Hongmeng Qi began to condense and eventually evolved into wisps of Hongmeng purple Qi that appeared in the depths of the vortex. Half of it helped Feng Zichen refine the source of eternity, and the other half helped him evolve a new physical body. A physical body completely composed of Hongmeng purple Qi. Hongmeng purple Qi was the foundation of the Great Path. A body composed of Hongmeng purple Qi was naturally the Great Path physique. It was truly supreme and even stronger than the body of the Chaos Demon God. Originally, Feng Zichen's current accumulation was not enough for him to cultivate the Hongmeng Great Path physique. However, he refined the Hongmeng Daozhong and refined this supreme innate treasure that symbolized the Hongmeng Great Path into his body, making it a part of him. In this way, Feng Zichen transformed into the Hongmeng Great Path physique. But from now on, there would no longer be a Hongmeng Daozhong in the world. He had completely merged with it. Too slow. Although the speed at which the Hongmeng vortex absorbed the Hongmeng Qi and the power of the Great Path was fast enough, Feng Zichen still felt that it was too slow. At this rate, it would take at least 1,000,000 years for him to succeed and come out of seclusion. It was too long and had already affected his layout. With a thought, Feng Zichen felt that the time to merge with his doppelganger had come. After setting up for so long, it was finally time to reel in the net. At this time, merging with his doppelganger could be used to achieve the limitless path of his original body. At the same time, he could also condense the complete Celestial Emperor karmic rank. Thinking of this, Feng Zichen no longer hesitated and shouted, "Where is Lei Zhe?" In the heavenly court, in the 9th heaven, the celestial punishment saint, the South Pole Longevity Emperor, who was in seclusion, suddenly opened his eyes and laughed, "My Dao is complete." After that, the celestial punishment saint's body suddenly disintegrated and turned into wisps of powerful essence Qi that surged into the boundless starry sky. What was left behind was a sage Dao fruit that was formed by the power of the heavenly path and the Hongmeng purple Qi. It revealed endless mysteries. What? The South Pole is actually the doppelganger of Great Emperor Ziwei. Is he going to return to his original body now? In the Eldritch world, the great mediums who saw this scene were all shocked. They were greatly shocked. The celestial punishment saint, one of the 7 saints of the heavenly path, one of the 4 imperials, was actually the doppelganger of Great Emperor Ziwei. This was too well hidden. It was unbelievable. Also, this method was too heaven-defying. He could actually push one of his doppelganger to the position of a saint. Great Emperor Ziwei was indeed the most powerful figure in the Eldritch world. He could think of and do things that ordinary people could not think of. After the shock, everyone thought about it carefully and felt that this was a matter of course. What kind of person was Great Emperor Ziwei? He firmly controlled the boundless starry sky. Even the heavenly path could not interfere. However, he allowed the South Pole Longevity Emperor to occupy the South Pole star. At that time, everyone was very puzzled. They only felt that the South Pole Great Emperor had offered a benefit that Great Emperor Ziwei could not refuse. That was why Great Emperor Ziwei agreed to this matter. But now, the truth was revealed. It turned out that the South Pole Great Emperor was his doppelganger. No wonder Great Emperor Ziwei gave away the South Pole star so readily. After the South Pole returned to its original position, the speed of the Hongmeng vortex suddenly increased greatly. It was twice as fast as before, but it was still not enough. After a while, Feng Zichen continued to shout, "The North Star is still here." As soon as this was said, before the North Star could react, the great mediums of the Eldritch world were already in an uproar. *CK. The North Star Great Emperor and Great Emperor Ziwei are actually the same person. The poor Wei guessed correctly back then, but how is this possible? How can he do this? A great mediums burst out as if they could not accept this fact. It was indeed too shocking. Who would have thought that the 2 people who were ranked as the top prodigies of the Eldritch world were actually the same person? Didn't this mean that Great Emperor Ziwei had fooled all the great mediums of the Eldritch world with his own strength? This was too ridiculous. It was the biggest joke in the world. Before this, if anyone dared to say that Great Emperor Ziwei and the North Star Great Emperor were the same person, The great mediums would have scolded them until they became autistic. The things that each of these two people had done alone were enough to make people blush with shame. The great mediums were not as good as them. If the two of them were the same person, then how terrifying would this person have to be able to accomplish so many things that were like legends in the eyes of the great mediums? There was no need to even think about it. This was absolutely impossible. Before this, it was not that no one had suspected that Great Emperor Ziwei and the North Star Great Emperor were the same person. However, when they thought of the things that the two of them had done, they laughed and felt that it was impossible. Such a person did not exist in this world. However, reality slapped them hard in the face. Such a person did exist in this world. There was a loud rumble. The North Star Great Emperor's body began to dissipate, turning into pure essence chi that surged into the boundless starry sky. After merging with the North Star Great Emperor's incarnation, the Hongmeng vortex's area suddenly doubled. It was like a real returning to ruins as it devoured the surrounding Hongmeng chi. P.S. This book is almost finished. I should be able to write the ending tomorrow. Unfortunately, I've disappointed everyone. Chapter 9:13. It wasn't enough. In the Hongmeng vortex, Feng Zichen's natal imprint was fusing with the source of eternity. At the same time, streams of Hongmeng purple gas wrapped around his body, faintly showing signs of forming a light cocoon. However, this speed was still too slow. Feng Zichen couldn't wait at all. With this thought in mind, a shout once again resounded throughout the three realms, "Where is Fengdu?" In the netherworld, in the Blood Sea. Hearing this voice, the Nether River Patriarch's body trembled violently, and he almost spat out blood. Good Lord, the old senior that he had always respected was actually the incarnation of Great Emperor Ziwei. This was really old. The Nether River Patriarch's face was distorted. Could it be that he couldn't defeat Feng Zichen, so he rushed forward? However, Feng Zichen's voice was not finished. After Fengdu, he shouted again, "Is the ultimate still here? Where are the inner demons?" This time, all the great divine powers were speechless. So, all the great divine powers after the rise of the human emperor were his incarnations. This person was really too terrifying. How did he do it? Only then could his avatars achieve unattainable achievements in various cultivation systems. Not to mention how shocked all the living beings of the primordial world were. After Feng Zichen withdrew all his incarnations, he finally began the final transformation. His natal imprint had completely fused with the source of eternity, and there was no longer any distinction between them. The Hongmeng vortex had also become even larger, comparable to the real returning void. The surrounding Hongmeng Qi and the power of the Great Tao were quickly refined and transformed into wisps of Hongmeng purple gas. They fused into Feng Zichen's true spirit and began to construct his new physical body. And just as Feng Zichen was rebuilding his physical body, the power of the heavenly gods of all his incarnations also began to fuse. The Emperor Ziwei star, which symbolized the authority of Great Emperor Ziwei, suddenly emitted a bright light. The light was so bright that it even covered the radiance of the sun and moon. The entire boundless starry sky, the three realms, and the myriad realms were all bathed in the light of the purple micro-starlight. At this moment, the Emperor's star stood high up in the sky, radiating a brilliant light that could be seen clearly by all the worlds in the universe. Rumble! Behind the North Star, at the other end of the boundless starry sky, the North Star, which represented the North Star of the North Star, and the South Star, which represented the North Star of the South Pole Emperor, also burst forth with resplendent light. At the same time, a surge of fate power gushed out from the two stars and gathered towards the Emperor Star. In the Renhuang city of the Central Divine Prefecture, there was also a powerful surge of fate gushing out. In the Nether Realm, inside Fengdu City, a monstrous amount of heaven providence also appeared. Deep in the sinkhole, in the fiend abyss, the fiendish light from providence was also gathering. Boundless amounts of chi rolled over, gathering into a ball above the Emperor's star, constantly evolving, as if something terrifying was about to be born. This caused the heavens and earth to tremble and wail, as if they were afraid. However, although that lump of luck was evolving, it was unable to take form. It was as if it was missing the most important part. Feng Zichen knew what it was missing. It was the power that could unify all this fate power. Hao Tian, who was in the heavenly court, also knew what it was missing because that power was in his body. It represented the authority of the celestial emperor. It was the basis that the heavenly path gave him to rule the three realms. It was the incomplete celestial emperor karmic position. Ziwei's plan is really amazing. Now, he is only one step away from success. As long as he takes back the incomplete celestial emperor karmic position in my body, he will be able to evolve into a true, perfect, and supreme celestial emperor karmic position. After understanding Feng Zichen's plan, Hao Tian had no intention of destroying it. He immediately used his magical power, preparing to force out the Jade Emperor's authority in his body. Return the favor. With Hao Tian's wisdom, he could completely see that with the strength that Feng Zichen was showing now, he could oust him from the position of Celestial Emperor at any time. There was no need to wait until today. But Feng Zichen didn't. Instead, he waited for him to break through to the primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian before starting his plan. Feng Zichen was giving Hao Tian face, so that he could have an end and retire with dignity instead of being ousted in a sorry state. Hao Tian was not an ungrateful person. Since Feng Zichen gave him face, he would naturally accept this favor and give him what he needed. Anyway, for the current Hao Tian, the Jade Emperor's authority was just something that he could do without. If he could help Feng Zichen because of this, he would be happy to see it happen. At the same time that Hao Tian took action, Yao Qi also took action and dispersed her Empress karmic position. Since Hao Tian regarded Wu Yi as the Emperor, he didn't need this Empress karmic position. Go. A purple stream of light flew out from between Hao Tian's eyebrows and fell into the fate power above Ziwei Star. And along with this voice, Hao Tian's majestic voice appeared. Today, I have achieved the Tao and obtained great freedom. In a few days, I will go to the chaos outside the sky to create a new world. I will cultivate in seclusion and no longer care about the affairs of the world. Great Emperor Ziwei, your merits are boundless. After I abdicate, I will pass on the throne to Great Emperor Ziwei. He will rule the untainted land and dominate the world. Hao Tian's voice was very loud. In the blink of an eye, it spread throughout the entire universe. Thus, all living beings knew about it. The world had changed. It had really changed. The era of the Jade Emperor controlling the world had passed. Now, it was Great Emperor Ziwei's turn to control the world. The living beings in the universe were discussing this, but the gods in the heavenly court seemed very calm. This was not the first time Great Emperor Ziwei had ruled the heavenly court. The reason why the heavenly court could be as prosperous as it was today was all thanks to Great Emperor Ziwei. It was in his hands that the prestige of the heavenly court reached its peak and dominated the entire untainted land. Apart from the gods on the investiture of the gods, most of the immortals and gods in the heavenly court were conferred by Great Emperor Ziwei. To them, Great Emperor Ziwei's ascension was the return of their old master. They could not be more happy, so why would they panic? Rumble. After obtaining the Jade Emperor's authority, the destiny above the Emperor's star began to evolve rapidly. It gradually took on a physical form. It was a seal that could not be described with words. It was infinitely close to perfection. It was like the heavenly path, supreme and supreme. The moment this Tao seal was formed, another purple stream of light shot out from the underworld's reincarnation palace. It headed straight for the boundless starry sky and merged into this Tao seal. This was the authority of the Lady of Earth. The Lady of Earth had sent him over. In an instant, the Tao seal finished evolving and was truly born. It emitted a supreme aura that ruled over everything. The world let out a loud roar. The myriad Taos were also trembling. The rules and order were also trembling. Everything was submitting to this Tao seal. Even the sage Tao fruit in the sage's body trembled in submission under the aura of this Tao seal. It did not dare to compete with it. That Tao seal clearly stood in the starry sky, but it seemed to be standing at the top of the world. It was even higher than the heavenly Tao and looked down on everything in this world. This was the Celestial Emperor's karmic rank. A complete Celestial Emperor's karmic rank, the top karmic rank in the untainted land. It symbolized supreme authority. With the blessing of the Celestial Emperor's authority, the speed at which Feng Zichen reconstructed his physical body accelerated again. In less than 1,000 years, he had reconstructed his physical body. It was a supreme physical body completely constructed from Hongmeng's purple qi. It was the Hongmeng Dao body. Rumble. At a certain moment, an earth-shattering aura suddenly came from the boundless starry sky. The aura was so strong that it was comparable to the Dao ancestors' Dao unification. It was far beyond the sages and could be said to be the most powerful in the untainted land. Limitless Daoyuo Jingxian. Great Emperor Ziwei has finally taken that step and stepped into the realm of limitless Daoyuo Jingxian. He has left us far behind. When the Dao ancestors' Dao unification, no one understood what it meant. But now, everyone knew that it represented a power that surpassed Daoyuo Jingxian's. Limitless, endless, limitless. At this realm, there was no limit. Magic power was boundless, and there was no limit to one's thoughts. After Ziwei became limitless, everyone knew that the general trend was gone. No one in the untainted land could keep him in check, not even the Dao ancestor. Is this the power of limitless Daoyuo Jingxian? How powerful! At this realm, I'm afraid it's impossible to challenge someone of a higher realm. After comprehending the changes in his body, Feng Zichen sighed. Magic power was meaningless to him. The limitless realm was a competition of the understanding and use of one's own great path. If it was really a level higher, then it was so high that there was no limit. It was impossible to rely on one's own strength to fight someone of a higher realm. One could only rely on powerful Dharma treasures or even stronger strength. However, Feng Zichen was special. He could fight someone of a higher realm because there was a purple gold rune between his eyebrows. That was the eternal rune. It was formed after his natal imprint and the eternal source had completely merged. It was also because of this Dao imprint that his power had a trace of eternal characteristics. With the power of eternity, Feng Zichen had the capital to fight someone of a higher realm. Although his realm was still that of limitless Daoyuo Jingxian, his power was extremely close to the level of half-step eternal. In other words, Feng Zichen's power could suppress any power below half-step eternal. This was his advantage against the enemy, the capital to fight someone of a higher realm. Collecting his thoughts, Feng Zichen turned to look at the power of the Celestial Emperor. After countless years of planning, I finally see the results today. With a thought, he took down the power of heaven and earth and integrated it into his body. In an instant, Feng Zichen felt an unimaginable power blessing his body, causing his strength to begin to rise. Soon, he reached the peak of limitless Daoyuo Jingxian, and then surpassed it and stepped into a new realm. It was also at this time that everything in the wilderness was clearly reflected in Feng Zichen's sea of consciousness. It could be said that at this time, as long as Feng Zichen wanted, he could know everything that happened in the wilderness. Nothing could be hidden from him anymore. The wilderness, to him, had no secrets at all. However, before Feng Zichen could immerse himself in it, an unparalleled pressure descended on him. It was as if he was carrying the entire world on his back. It was unusually heavy. No, it was not as if it was just like that. At this moment, the pressure of the entire untainted land was on Feng Zichen. This was the price one had to pay to become the Celestial Emperor. The Celestial Emperor not only represented supreme power, but also unparalleled responsibility. From the moment Feng Zichen became the Celestial Emperor, the fate of the entire wilderness, and even all living beings in the world, was on him. How could it not be heavy? Oh, very good. With pressure, there is motivation. This pressure from the world and all living beings will definitely allow me to reach the peak of the Great Tao. With a loud laugh, Feng Zichen suddenly puffed out his chest and resisted all the pressure. At this moment, he shouldered the fate of all living beings. It was also at this moment that he truly became the Celestial Emperor of the wilderness, ruling over everything and being high and mighty. From this moment on, Feng Zichen was not only the emperor of the human race, but also the emperor of the entire wilderness. Not only did he have to lead the human race to prosperity, But he also had to lead the entire wilderness to prosperity. He wanted the wilderness to transform into an eternal world that would last forever and not be disturbed by the great calamity. It was also at this moment that all living beings, regardless of their size, whether they were Tao ancestors, saints, great divine powers, commoners, ordinary cultivators, or immortals, all of them bowed to the Ziwei star and said, "Praise the celestial emperor." The indistinct purple gold palace, the majestic green jade palace. He controls the power of the 7 polities of the Ziwei star and is the emperor of a lineage. The 3 flowers Yuxiu and the 5 latitudes Neon Jing are the cardinal points of creation. He is the great handle of the human god, the supreme celestial emperor in the golden palace in the Daluo sky. On the first day of the first year of the celestial emperor's calendar, the great emperor of Ziwei ascended the throne in the Daluo sky. He was called the Supreme Celestial Emperor and ruled over all living beings in the Daluo sky. On the same day, in the Celestial Emperor's Ascension Hall, the Celestial Emperor conferred Yueshan Wangshu and Dragon Lady Ao Shui as the Empress of Heaven. They were revered by heaven and earth and enjoyed the glory of the heavens together. In the 1000th year of the Celestial Emperor's calendar, the Celestial Emperor and Tao ancestor joined forces to build a chaos temple in the chaos beyond the heavens. They selected the fated people to enter and go to the realm sea to fight. They began to plan against the chaos demon god. That's it, it's over. I know that I have a lot of holes to fill. If you want to scold me, then scold me. I can understand. If I have time in the future, I will write an extra chapter and try to fill in some details that I haven't written before. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.